Hello, I'm Nancy Stowe, and I'd like to welcome you to our Women in Power event. It's great to see such a big crowd. I am the food editor at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. It's a job I've had for the last 25 years, which might lead you to wonder, what am I doing here? What's food got to do with any of this? Well, not a whole lot, except for the pretzels and lemonade. So let me explain briefly how this all came about. As a journalist, I'm naturally curious and passionate about many things, not just food, and one of those is women's issues. Excuse me. So last fall, when I realized that 2019 would bring the 100th anniversary of Wisconsin ratifying the 19th Amendment, and that we were the first state to officially do so, I thought to myself, we really should, yes, yay! So in case you don't know the story, Illinois voted a few minutes before we did, but they screwed up the paperwork, so we were first. Anyway, I thought we really should bring this to the attention of our readers. Yesterday was the actual anniversary of that historic vote, and for the last 5 Sundays, we've been running stories in the Journal-Sentinel about the women's suffrage movement in Wisconsin and about the status of women's political participation across the state today. It was my pleasure to coordinate that project. I hope many of you read that series, but if you didn't, they're all on our website at jsonline.com/suffrage. As you know, getting the vote did not end the struggle to find an equal place at the table for women. It still goes on today. And that brings us to these 5 women here who are going to speak and answer your questions tonight. Representative Jessie Rodriguez, unfortunately, canceled this morning. But before we start the program, a few housekeeping notes. On the back of your program is a URL to a very short evaluation of the event. And I hope you all will take a minute to fill it out tonight at the end of the evening to let us know how we did. Second, some of you will find a hot pink Post-it note under your chair. Everybody look at once. If you do, no, you didn't win a car, but you did win a free 3-month subscription to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, a free digital subscription. So please, at the end of the program, take your note to the Journal-Sentinel table at the entryway, and they will help you sign up. And if you already have a subscription, good for you. You can gift this one to someone else. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Christine Farr, president of Mount Mary University, which is a co-sponsor of this event along with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. She will say a few words.
Well, good evening and welcome to Mount Mary campus. We're very proud to be co-hosting this event with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that celebrates women's right to vote. And tonight, you are in a place that reflects the pioneering spirit of these women who will share their stories. So I wanted to provide you just a little bit of information about this university that started over 100 years ago. Back in 1913, 6 years before women earned the right to vote, the state of Wisconsin granted a charter to the School Sisters of Notre Dame to open the state's first 4-year degree for lay women in Prairie du Chien. Then in the late 1920s, the sisters purchased this location, formerly known as the Swan Farm, and moved what was then St. Mary's College to this place, which is our current home. This fall, we will celebrate 90 years at this current location. Today, we're very proud of Mount Mary's achievements in empowering women and how our student success directly affects the Milwaukee landscape and the workforce. And let me mention just a couple examples. The first is the Grace Scholars Program, a Burke grant-funded program for low-income, high-achieving women from Milwaukee zip codes. This group is graduated its largest class ever this year. Retention and persistence rates are consistently making impressive gains, and most of these graduates stay here in Milwaukee, which is good news. I got 3 or 4 more, so you better not clap after everyone. I wanted to tell you this other great news is that this year we graduated a young woman who for the first time is receiving a Fulbright scholarship to teach English in Kazakhstan, and another woman who during her summer break created a United Nations organization for youth in Rwanda. In the last 3 years, we have received $8.4 million in federal and foundation grants to support student success and inclusion, particularly in the fields of STEM. And this coming fall, we are launching our first ever Compass program. This is the first of its kind in the nation, which will allow women to enter college undecided about their major, get the support they need to determine their path quickly and efficiently, and still graduate in 4 years. Our alumni fill the city. They are fashion and interior designers, writers, teachers, artists and art therapists, counselors, occupational therapists, nurses, and many, many more occupations. They are giving back to this city of their many gifts and talents. And these are just a few examples of the successes that are happening on this women's university campus. So, if you know a college-bound woman of any age, if she is a pioneer of the future, then tell her that Mount Mary is a place that will support her spirit. We are here for women. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you enjoy this evening.
My name is Mary Spacuzza, and I'm an investigative reporter with Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. I'm also a Milwaukee native, and I moved back to my home state in 2009 to cover the state capitol for the Wisconsin State Journal. I've had the honor of working for the Journal-Sentinel since 2015, and I currently live with my husband and my daughter and our rescue greyhound in the house where I grew up in Shorewood. And my mother actually graduated from Mount Mary. I won't say when, but it was a while ago. We have a great panel tonight, and I'm going to introduce each woman one by one and then give her the chance to come up to the podium and tell her story. First up, we have Dr. Joan Prince. Dr. Prince is Vice Chancellor for Global Inclusion and Engagement at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She's a clinical associate professor in medical laboratory sciences with a specialty in hematology and flow cytometry. In 2012, she was nominated by President Barack Obama to the post of alternate representative to the 67th Assembly of the United Nations. She's a member of many civic boards. Please help me welcome Dr. Prince.
Thank you everyone, and thank you Mary. Thank you obviously to Mount Mary for hosting, and thank you to the Journal-Sentinel for this what I think is a historic gathering of women and their supporters in the room for us to reminisce a little bit, to walk you through our paths for about 10 minutes each, and then to really help you understand that we stand on this stage not by our own volition in any way, but by those women and men who supported women's right to vote 100 years ago, and walked and walked and knocked and walked and did what had to be done so that we could stand here. As I watched, and many of you as well, over the last 3 or 4 nights, some of the documentaries that were on television about the women's right to vote, I don't know if any of you saw one where they actually spoke to the granddaughter of a woman and who she remembers her grandmother telling her the story about the first time she was able to go and vote, and her husband left her after that because she decided to vote. You put the end of the story together yourself. On that one, she said her grandma was in no ways upset. No way upset. But as I stand here before you, I'm going to hopefully let you look through my eyes as this young girl from Milwaukee, born and raised right here in Milwaukee, from what unfortunately is designated as the poorest zip code in the state, the 06 zip code. But how that young woman got from that zip code area to actually representing the United States chair, occupying the chair in the General Assembly of the United Nations. I tell everyone I love to share the story that I actually lost myself when I was 6 years old in books. I had traveled the world by the time I was 8, and it was because I was able to walk in a very safe city at that time to the Center Street Library. That was the only place in town my parents allowed us to go by ourselves, and I lost myself in the books in the library and traveled everywhere. So by the age of 9.5, I had the distinct honor of being the children's representative. You'll love this. I still have my ears. The children's representatives for the Billy the Bookworm Club of the Milwaukee Public Library. And I like to tell everyone that was the first board that I served on, and I've served on a board every year of my life since then, even chairing the Milwaukee Public Library Board, which I'm still on, and I have to get off soon. But as I think about how I got the opportunities that I got in my life, most of us walk the same type of walk. We walk it in a different skin, in a different zip code, in a different family, in a different environment. But there are always obstacles for women to climb over, no matter who you are. My life was no exception to that. I integrated my high school here in Wisconsin, so you can imagine that that was probably not the most pleasant experience. But from there, I went to a university in a field. I did all my degrees across town at your friends over at UWM. And even there, I had women who put their arms around me. They saw a talent in me that I didn't always see in myself. But they saw that talent, and they were there to help that talent and opportunity meet. That's really how I look at the women mentors in my life, that they actually saw some type of talent, and they were my opportunity to blend those two together to get on a path where I wanted and desired to go. I see some of my former work colleagues in the room. I was a very young supervisor at a large 5-hospital laboratory system here at a young age. I was in my late 20s when I became the supervisor, and you can imagine that that in itself brought issues and concerns. I learned a lot. I think I did a lot of good, but I also made a lot of mistakes. And once again, I had women mentors to help me and to guide that path for me. From there, when I received the call from the White House, I won't bore you with that story, but it's actually a very funny story because I hung up on them. It really is. I hung up on them when they called, and, you know, who does that? Like, this is White House presidential personnel. I said, well, really? And this is laughing, click. So I hung up. So they called back and said, no, they're laughing. They're like, no, it's really us. So I'll tell you what, grab a pen, here's a number, call us back. And it's exactly what happened. But when we went through the vetting process, that's a whole series we'll have to talk about one day. because it started in October and I finished in April. But now it was the time where the rubber meets the road, and I actually had to pack up. I've never lived anywhere except Milwaukee. And I had to pack up and move to New York before the UN convened, before the General Assembly convened that year. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have in your pocket. It doesn't matter at all. There's always, I think, for most of us, that's that feeling where confidence starts to recede on you and you're wondering, can I do this? Do I have what it takes to do this? What went through my brain was, my goodness, I am representing my country, and what if I make a mistake? I can't make a fatal mistake. I'm a layperson. I didn't live a life in the world of diplomacy. Can I do this? So what did I do? I called 3 of my female mentors. One of them, who's deceased now, was the first female executive at Manpower, Eileen Knock. And I talked to her, and I will never forget. She was in her late 80s, I believe, at that time, mid-80s maybe. And she said, get over here right now. I said, okay, and I did. And she sat me down, and she talked about the fact that everyone makes mistakes. Walk with your head held high. If you make a mistake, own it, and keep moving. When I listened to her stories, try being the first female executive at a company like Manpower, and I listened to her story, it gave me the strength, the energy that I needed to walk into that General Assembly the following week and act as if I had been there before. I'll tell you this quick story before I sort of pull it together and sit down. The first day of the General Assembly is Madhouse. And believe it or not, everyone does not hate the United States. All of the ambassadors, I had 192 other friends, wanted to meet the ambassador from the U.S. So my seat was very, very crowded. And I did what my mother had taught me. I showed up the night before, and I practiced. So I knew how to use the translator. I had purchased my own little cute earplugs. My headphones. I was ready. I knew how to press buttons. So what do? I walk in with confidence. I sit down at the U.S. chair. I'm meeting and greeting. It is time to get started. I turn my translator on, and all of a sudden, I hear this voice from above that says, the chair recognizes, they called us back then Her Excellency. It won't buy you lunch, so don't use it. Her Excellency from the United States of America. And I thought, uh-oh, was I supposed to have an opening here? And I looked up and I realized my elbow was on the call button. So all 192 of my friends are looking at me. So what I thought of was, you just rescue yourself. So what I said was, Her Excellency from the United States of America wishes for the chair to have a wonderful year, and we are here to be supportive. And he smiled, clapped, and winked because he knew exactly what had happened. But I say that to say to you that where you start in life, you know this, is never where you'll end up. And you'll end up in a better place if you always remember those that came before you. Those women and men who could not vote. Think of walking to a voting poll and being turned away. Think of not having rights as a female. These are women that we can't even begin to think about what they went through. So how dare we not remember them? How dare we not recognize them for what they did? And we also always need to remember that where power is perceived, it is about the impact of where you sit. So if you think you're sitting at a pretty good, powerful spot, make sure you're having impact. Make sure you're thanking those that walked before you, who took all of the hits for you to take the seat that you have. And then remember to reach back for the young women, and I'm so glad we have one on the panel with us, for those young women who deserve an opportunity to occupy the seat that we are simply keeping warm for you, and to pull them forward. Because no woman has a right until all women have rights. And I'm very grateful for those in my life that gave me the opportunity to have the life that I have. So I thank you, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Betsy Brenner. Betsy Brenner retired as publisher of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel in 2016 after more than 3 decades in the newspaper industry. She oversaw Wisconsin's largest newspaper, its websites, and a wide range of related businesses through a challenging period in the news industry. Under Brenner's leadership, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel won 3 Pulitzer Prizes. She also serves on numerous boards. Please help me welcome Betsy Brenner.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you to Mount Mary University for hosting us this evening. Thanks to all of you for being here. Well, Dr. Prince reminded us to look back at those that came before us, and she told a fabulous story about her life. I'm going to tell you a story about my life, and it's a story that reaches back to the people who came before me and helped shape who I think I am today. I definitely wrote a story, and so bear with me as I reach back through the narrative that helped explain my path to power. Danish pastry dripping with icing, the crisp bite of a slice of rye bread, bagels begging to wrap around your finger before you slice, slather on the cream cheese, and devour them. Now, we know we're all shaped by the experiences of our childhood. Mine was spent in a warm, loving, sometimes contentious family bakery. My path to power began at Brenner's Bakery. It was the place in Seattle, Washington that you went to for kosher bread, delicatessen, and delicacies. Drew customers from all over the Pacific Northwest. It was run by my father, Charlie, my uncles Itzy and Joe, and my aunt Yetta. And they followed in the footsteps of their father and their grandfather before them. Well, I didn't know it then, but it was really helped present my first exposure to the world of work. I learned to take care of customers, learned to work with employees, learned to make decisions. So join me, if you will, for a trip through Brenner's Bakery. It's early morning, and the sun is just rising. You push back the heavy wooden door at the back of the shop, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. It's the smell of warm baked bread, of mixing doughs, topped off by the note of sweet cinnamon rolls. You dodge the rack of Russian rye and caraway rye bound for the slicing machines, and there are the bakers, Max, Big Lou, Uncle Itzy. Their white aprons are already stained with strawberry filling and chocolate chip cookie dough. If they weren't looking, and I was lucky, I could reach into that vat of dough and grab a hunk and bite it off before anyone knew about it. If you breathe deeply, you can smell the donuts, hot out of the oven, just waiting for the icing that the shop clerks are spreading over the top. It's melting down the sides. Pans clatter onto shelves out front as they stock the cases for the day. But keep a run now. It's time to move out and get ready for the day. My job was to slice the loaves of bread, make sure they were ready for the trucks, and put them in the heavy boxes that slid onto the ramps outside. Now, I had a hard time with those heavy wooden boxes. You load them up with 20 loaves of bread, each one a 2-pounder, and you stagger your way to the trucks. The men would say, "Betsy, you better get someone to help you with that box." But quite honestly, I don't remember any of them volunteering to help me, right? I wanted to prove I could do it on my own, so that was okay with me. It was time to jump on a truck, and my father, Charlie, was the truck driver. Now let's ride through the city with my dad, going to every stop in the city of Seattle, and there every single shop owner and every shop clerk knew his name. "Hi, Charlie, glad you could make it," they'd say. And in every one of those stores, he'd rush to the shelves, he'd lay out the loaves of bread with the Brenner's label on top facing out. He looked carefully for those loaves of Wonder Bread that kind of moved over to our side of the shelf, and he pushed to shove them back where they belong. He's cordial, but he's quick, and he remembers every customer that wanted apricot Danish or onion rolls that day. We rode through the hills of the city of Seattle. We went to Union Market. We went to Three Girls Bakery. We went to Hazel Ruse's shop to drop off our day-olds. We went to the De Laurentiis Grocery, and we went to the Husky Scandinavian Market. We even went to the very first Starbucks, when it was a tiny coffee shop at the back end of the public market. If we only knew then what we knew now. Charlie was the bookkeeper, too. And every day at the end of the week, he'd bring a thick pad of charge slips for me to read off to him as he entered them in the adding machine. When I was a kid, my favorite job was to pull the manual handle on that old adding machine. But my dad probably knew every charge and every customer by heart. He didn't need an adding machine after all. I remembered when he'd come home every day, my mom would ask him the same thing. How much money today? And he'd tell her the amount of cash that he'd pull out of the cash register every day. And he told her that number each and every day. Well, back at the shop, the customers are lining up for rye bread, pastrami, for pickles and pumpernickel, for cream cheese and Kaiser rolls. My Uncle Joe was stocking the pans for the remainder of the day, and my Aunt Yetta was behind the counter. She'd give a free cookie to every kid who came into the place, and to their parents if they asked for it too. Uncle Joe taught us all how to take care of customers, and when I grew up to put on a pink apron so I could work behind the counter, he had the same instructions for all of us. Be fair, be friendly, make good change, and be honest. Well, being honest meant that when the customers asked, is it fresh? And it wasn't. You had to steer them to something that just came out of the oven. When they asked, is it good? The answer was easy. Of course it's good. It came from Brenner's. So when we look back and remember, Uncle Joe taught us a lot. He was on the phone offering free bakery and free cakes to any church, any synagogue, or any charity that asked for them. He was also on the phone hiring immigrants to come to work there. That's how Irving Klejcek from Russia came to join us as a bread slicer. That's how Helen Godinova and her mother Natasha put on their pink aprons and came to work behind the counter. They were from Czechoslovakia. Their English was improving, but I've got to tell you, they never missed a shift. They were as loyal as they could be, and they were consistent every single day. They were so grateful for being there. And I want to tell you, I was too. Even though it irritated me every time the alarm clock went off on a Saturday morning at 4:30 a.m., I was so grateful for the chance to be there and learn, because I realized I was learning how to be a leader. Everything I saw and everything I knew in that bakery was helping me to be a better boss. Uncle Itzy demanded on product quality. Everything he made, everything that came out of that oven had no preservatives and no additives. And this was long before natural food was fashionable. He insisted that everything be pure. And so anything that came from Brenner's, you could count on the fact that the quality and the integrity of what we made was as good as it could be. There was nothing fake in our bread, and I want to tell you there's nothing fake in our news either. My Uncle Joe taught us about fairness, how to treat your employees with respect, and how to reach out to people who were in need and provide them a helping hand. That's why so many immigrants came to work at our shop. That's why Irving Klejcek from Russia became the delivery people from Russia, from Haiti, and from a number of countries who may not know the language, but know how to leave a newspaper on a subscriber's porch timely and exactly where the subscriber wants it. The customer is always right, Uncle Joe told us, and that goes for advertisers and for subscribers too. Aunt Yetta told us to appreciate every child who comes into place. Every one of them got a shortbread cookie, and I want to tell you, a shortbread cookie was enough to open their eyes and deliver a smile every single day. She taught us how valuable kids are and to appreciate and love them every way you can. My father, Charlie, put me on a truck and showed me that there was a world outside. A truck can go very far, and if you open your eyes, listen and learn from the people you meet there, you'll go far too. So I want to tell you that Brenner's closed in 1990. The next generation, the third generation of sons, didn't want to put in the 12-hour days and the 6-day weeks that their fathers had. But even now, we look back and we remember a lot of things. We remember what we were taught, we remember what was important, and we remember just how much it meant. I learned to be a better boss by working there, and I'm so appreciative of the chance I got to learn. Charlie, Joe, Itzy, and Yetta, they're all gone now. But I hope in some ways that their lessons rubbed off on me. And even today, when I have a whiff of fresh baked bread, the scent of fresh cinnamon rolls, or even the picture of a pink apron behind the counter, I can't help but remember exactly where I came from. Thank you.
Mary Burke is CEO and founder of Building Brave. That's a nonprofit organization with the mission of connecting, inspiring, and empowering women to lead their bravest lives. She serves on boards of the Burke Foundation, Morgridge Institute of Research, and Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and is president of the Madison School Board. In 2015, she was the first major party female candidate for governor of the state of Wisconsin. Please welcome Mary Burke.
Well, thank you. It is really my pleasure to be here, and thank you to Mount Mary. Thank you to the Journal Sentinel for hosting this, and I am really honored to be a part of this and to tell my story. My life changed pretty dramatically just about over 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. And it was in a little park in downtown Milwaukee called Cathedral Square. And to this day, I cannot drive by that park without reliving those moments. It was the day after that I announced my run for governor of Wisconsin. We pulled up, and I'm on the phone with my communications director, Joe. And I'm saying to him, Joe, 5 questions, that's it. Cut them off. Do not leave me hanging out there. Because I knew with each question that came, it would be one more chance that I would screw up. And that would be Wisconsin's first impression of Mary Burke. Well, I looked out into the park, and I saw this enormous gaggle of cameras and reporters. When I share this story with Joe, he's like, Mary, it wasn't that big. But if you have never done a press conference before, it looked pretty big to me. Well, I looked down, and I was just physically shaking. I had never been more scared in my entire life. I remember taking 10 deep breaths and opening up that car door and walking up that sidewalk, just projecting confidence. But in my mind, all I was thinking is, what the hell have I got myself into? I was a business person, not a politician. I was brought up to work hard, to be independent. Don't ask for help, and definitely don't toot your own horn.
Well, all I did for 13 months was ask for help and toot my own horn. All the things that candidates do, frankly, are really, really strange for normal people. They are. Media interviews, public speaking. I had a tracker from the opposition who would trail me whenever I stepped out in public with a video camera, just waiting for me to stumble or say something stupid, and it'd be up on social media within hours. I wasn't thick-skinned at all, but I knew I needed to be, because if I let them get to me, I was going to lose. So every day, no matter how scared I was, no matter how uncomfortable it was, I got up and I walked out there projecting confidence. I was so scared those first few months giving interviews in front of cameras that I would get this condition called dry mouth, where I didn't know if I could make it through even a 2-minute interview without completely losing my voice. That first day that I stepped out there, I felt like I was all alone with the entire world judging me. But what I realized as the days went by and the weeks went by was I wasn't out there all alone. Everywhere I turned, there were people encouraging me, helping me up when I stumbled, supporting me, believing in me. And no time was that more important than the day after Election Day. I think you guys know I lost, right? Well, I woke up and I felt like I had been hit by a truck. I had never thought about losing. I was only focused on winning. But I woke up, and not only had I lost after spending every waking minute of 13 months focused on one thing, but I had let down hundreds of thousands of people who had put their hopes and their dreams in me, who had helped me, who had supported me, and I had come up short. Well, I knew I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. And I didn't know how long it would be before I was ready to face the world. So I have a cottage out in the country, and I decided that would be the perfect place to go. It's 80 acres, and I can go weeks without seeing a soul. So I stopped at my local grocery store to pick up some supplies, and I was just hoping that no one would notice me. I had my hair in a ponytail, I had a baseball cap pulled down, I was in sweats, and the woman behind the meat counter takes one look at me, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're Mary Burke." She's like, "I'm so sorry." And with that, it was 13 months of pent-up emotion just came streaming down my cheeks. I could not hold back the tears. I think I scared her half to death because she runs from behind the meat counter and she comes up to me and she's like, "I just have to give you a hug." Well, I went out to the cottage and I couldn't do anything all day. I was just emotionally and physically drained. All I did was watch TV. I didn't answer calls, I didn't check text, email, nothing. So I think it was about 5 o'clock when I thought, I deserve it. And I opened a bottle of wine. I went back to my TV watching, and a couple hours later, the phone rings, and for some reason, I decide to answer it. Probably the wine, right? And I didn't know who it was. It was a restricted call. And I answered. The person said, "Is this Mary Burke?" And I said, "It is." And she said, "The president would like to talk with you." And I was like, wow. And all I was thinking was, how much of that bottle have I drank in? Well, I woke up the next morning and the water was out. It's a well and it was gone. And I called the repair people. They came out. They told me that it would be a couple of weeks before they could get the parts in and replace the pipe. And I thought about it and realized I had to go back to Madison. I had to face the world. And as I thought about it, I realized I had nothing to be ashamed of. That first of all, I had taken on a challenge that no one else virtually in the state was stepping up to take on. That I had done the best job that I could. That we had exceeded most people's expectations by tying up the race and having a real shot at winning. And I became the first woman in Wisconsin history to win a primary for governor and be on the ballot. And if you're a Democrat and you live in Madison, Wisconsin, it can be a pretty friendly place to go, even if you lost. And I have to say, later that summer, I was coming out of an office building, and I was running late. My meter had expired. I hate getting tickets. And I run out of there, and I see the parking enforcement guy standing right next to my car. And I run up to him. I'm all ready with my excuse. And he turns to me, and he says, there's only two people in the world I don't write tickets for, my mom and you. So I tell this story because I would have never run for governor. It was other people who saw my potential. It was other people who dragged me out of my comfort zone. Now, I'd love to be governor. 6 generations of my family have lived here, but it had never crossed my mind. And it took a lot to push me out of there. And the real reason in the end was because no one else was stepping up. And if I was the best person to take on the challenge, I felt I should do so. But that is what I think about with the women who 100 years ago, or those who started this fight 170 years ago, were thinking. I'm sure at some moments during that battle, they thought, what the hell have I gotten myself into? But we still have a lot of work to go. Many of the legal issues have been taken care of, but we still have structural issues. We have social norms. We have biases that continue to hold women back from our true potential. So I want to thank the women who went before me so that I can stand here and do what I've done with my life. I'm going to dedicate the rest of it to connecting, inspiring, and empowering women. And I just ask anyone else here who cares about this, who cares about the future for women, to do the same. Because we all have it in our own power to step a little further out of our comfort zone and take on things that aren't always easy to take on. So thank you very much for being here, and I look forward to hearing more.
Bria Smith is an 18-year-old youth activist and president of the Milwaukee Youth Council. A 2019 graduate of Franklin High School, she has organized and mobilized young people of color to voice their concerns about gun violence in the city. She works with the Pearls for Teen Girls, an organization that encourages female empowerment. Her website, honeyforyourtea.com, gives young girls of color a platform to write about their experiences with discrimination and oppression. She plans to continue her work through film and journalism and will attend Emerson College in the fall. Please welcome Bria Smith.
Hi. Cool. Sorry, I have rules. I'm going to abide by them. Hi, everyone. My name is Bria. Sorry if my voice sounds a little scratchy. I'm recovering from a cold, but that's not going to stop me from being here and sharing this space with all of you phenomenal women and men who are here. Thank you. And sharing stories. So when I'm thinking of a story that kind of defines me as a young woman, I can't think of one because I like to run my brain and make things complicated and always difficult, like always. But when I think of just being a young woman, I have a 3-point principle that it's reflection, digestion, and creation. Can you guys repeat that? Reflection, digestion, creation. So first off, reflection. Reflecting back on like my life as a little peeny Bria, starting school. My mom got all of us ready. I was the youngest of 5, so I would go to kindergarten, just so excited to go to school. And I was in a program called Chapter 220. So it would take inner city kids, bus them like 25 minutes outwards to white suburban to diversify those schools. So me with my big backpack on and my crazy hairstyle, sorry mama, you did not know how to do hair that well, putting her on the spot, putting us on the bus stop. And I remember going to school, going into class, so excited to learn, but being faced by people who did not look like me, who didn't represent me. No one I can kind of like relate with because we share different skin colors, we share different experiences and different understandings of who we were as young kids. And at first, that didn't bother me. I was a young child and I wanted to be in school, I wanted to have fun, I wanted to learn and just be a student, but I remember learning about my history in a school that didn't look like me or represent me or even understand me. And it was so hard, especially as a young girl of color because I was never asked, Bria, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about learning this in this school, in this environment? And my teacher would always tell me, like, Bria, you matter too, just like the other students. And I would say I thought that I mattered before. So at a young age, I was faced with this, not even understanding to articulate racism or oppression at the age of 6. Young, craving education and knowledge and wanting to be accepted, but not having a safe space to do so. And I would turn to my friends like, girl, did you hear that? Like, that's crazy, but it was this barrier. We didn't have intersectional feminism at the age of 6. There was an understanding of different communities. So I'll go back to my inner city. I'd be faced by this other community of just black individuals, and I wanted to be empowered by them, but I had that disparity. I was too black for the white community, but too white for the black community. So I was faced in this intersection. So as a young girl, if I'm not asked how am I feeling, if I'm not told that my voice is validated and my truth needs to be heard, how am I supposed to feel confident? How am I supposed to come into spaces feeling that I'm supposed to be there and that I'm worthy of a microphone, that I'm worthy of a platform, and that I'm worthy of my voice is supposed to be validated? So reflecting on 6-year-old Bria, I would want to have told her that it doesn't matter what people are setting precedent for you. You defy every narrative and every space that you come into. Creating and digestion and reflection, moving on to absorbing different traumas and hurts to redefine me as a young woman. Just last year, around June, I remember I was asked to join the March for Our Lives tour. I was speaking on a panel about inner city gun violence, and afterwards, the supervisor of the tour came up to me and said, Bria, how would you feel about going out to dinner with us? I was like, yeah, sure, I love free food. Like, where are we going? Like, of course. And then later on, I'm communicating, I'm talking, I'm getting context just in the community. And then later he comes back up to me and he's like, Bria, what do you think about going on tour with us? At this point, I didn't even know they were on tour. I was very oblivious to the entire organization and what was happening. I'd like, give me 1 second. I run off and go call my mom really quick because like I'm only 17. So I'm like, Mom, can I go on tour with these people? And she's like, what? No, you're not going on tour. Come home. And I'm like, Mom, like something in me knew that my voice in 6-year-old Bria was telling me, you need to go. That platform is waiting out for you. And because your voice was silenced when you were younger, this is your new chance for you to lift yourself up. So I'm like, Mom, let me go on tour. Let me talk about inner city gun violence. Let me bring intersectionality into a conversation that doesn't invite people of color to sit there, young women of color to sit there. She's like, put me on the phone with them. I want to know who they are. And so moving forward, I joined tour, packed my bags for 3 days, but ended up staying for 3 months of the summer. And I remember meeting with politicians, having interviews, being in spaces of gun violence survivors, of the Columbine survivors, the Route 551 survivors, and everyone who has been affected by gun violence, and not understanding how I was supposed to amount to the potential that people were telling me that I had. Because I felt like I was just an inner city kid from Milwaukee. And you say you're from 5 through 206, I'm from 5 through 201, but it still resembled those disparities and injustices. And I felt like my voice did not matter because I did not see black women in these type of avenues. Representation is what fueled me, but I didn't see it. So how do you set precedent for other young women to come into these spectrums and actually revolutionize it for themselves? So in the digestion process, I'm absorbing people's stories, I'm understanding them, and I'm also creating my own. Because in order to have an idea of feminism or women empowerment, every single woman needs to be on the same page. And that's where I ask my counterparts and the allies to understand that in order to digest and progress forward and advance with understanding women empowerment, we all need to be together uplifting a platform. So moving forward to the next principle of creation, how do I want to make Bria a person that's actually giving back to society, contributing? I remember after the 2016 elections, my school, we don't really have a big people of color community, but a lot of my friends are girls of color, and we were talking about the things that people would say to us, either go back to your country or you don't belong here, or they'll call us the N-word, or they'll tell girls who are wearing hijabs to take off their hijabs, and all these things that were not, that shouldn't have been said. And these girls that I was talking to, they were too afraid to use their voice because there was a huge community telling them to be silent. But how do we tell these young girls who are afraid to use their voice that they are validated as well? So I went to the internet. I tried to find different places for me to create a blog for girls who felt like they couldn't be a part of the conversation because they weren't asked to. So I created honeyforyourtea.com. The tea resembled your bitter truth as a young girl. My truth, growing up in a white suburban, not feeling like I'm validated, and my truth was always silenced, and how that defined me as an individual. But your tea is your self-love, and how you're able to just put a little self-love and sweetness in your tea. It's still tea, your truth is there, but how are you able to drink it and accept it and move forward and share it with other people? So Honey for Your Tea was created, and I wanted to let young girls know, young girls of color especially, that what you are going through, what you are experiencing is validated. And I will always ask you the question, what do you want to do to change it? And I think it's really funny that people always ask me, like, Bria, you're so young. Like, how are you doing all these things or all these other things? But I explain to them that if I'm so young to be putting my truth into power and activating a conversation, then I was too young to experience injustice at a young age. I was too young to go through these different things. And as young people, or just people in general who want to make change, we have to be invited by older generations to a conversation where we all can be accepted into one. But I'm so grateful for the different things that my mom sacrificed to put me in, or the different things in me going on tour, and understanding that my voice does have sentiment, and that I am validated as a young woman. And it doesn't matter that I can enter different spaces and feel that I'm actually revolutionizing something and changing something, because as a young girl, I want to envision a world where I don't have to say fight the power of a woman, because that should already be a norm. That should be the narrative. We should be redefining it now so that our children can live blissfully in the future. So I want to repeat the principles one more time: reflection, digestion, creation. Thank you.
Amy Lindner is the president and CEO of United Way of Greater Milwaukee and Waukesha County, raising $56 million during her first fundraising campaign last year. Previously, she was president and CEO of Meta House, a Milwaukee-based nonprofit whose mission is to end generational cycles of addiction by healing women and strengthening families. She was also previously a partner at the law firm Reinert Borner Van Duren. Please welcome Amy Lindner.
I have a bag of rocks. My path to power was created stone by stone by people who made the choice to care. My mother is part of a line of uninterrupted women who persevered against unfair and sometimes cruel obstacles. Without a high school diploma, newly single, My mom kept my brothers and I fed and housed and clothed, but there wasn't a lot of money or budget for extras. Statistically speaking, there are lots of reasons I could have and perhaps should have fallen through the cracks, but by the care of other people, I didn't. My second grade teacher at Lowell Elementary kept me after school on the last day of class to gift me the classroom's dictionary. She had seen my voracious reading, and she wanted to encourage me to keep reaching higher. My mom barely had money to put my little brothers into daycare, so even though I was just 9, it was my responsibility to go home after school and to take care of myself. The rule was that I had to stay home by myself so my mom didn't have to worry about where I was or who I might be with. I still sort of remember the melancholy of watching the afternoon sun fade as I would watch the clock in hopes that my mom would be home soon with my brothers. Girl Scouts was a sunny spot during that time. Mrs. O'Reilly and Mrs. Musial were our troop leaders. They were busy women with full lives, daughters of their own, and yet they poured time and love into every girl in that troop, including me. Mrs. Downing was my third grade teacher, and I specifically remember her writing in my grade school yearbook that she couldn't wait to see what I would accomplish in 10 or 15 or 20 years. At that time, I had not yet seen a family member graduate from college, and in fact, I didn't personally know a Hispanic college graduate. The fact that this luminous woman had hopes and expectations for me sparked the idea that maybe I too should have hopes and expectations for me. Mrs. Bear, my guidance counselor, was the first person who explained the concept of leadership for me, and she encouraged me to run for student council. It was there that I learned that I like having a voice, that I like having a seat at the table to influence decisions, even if our largest accomplishment was getting us up to 2 days where we could buy ice cream at lunch. That's a big one, yeah. In 11th grade, I switched history sections at the semester break, and on that first day, Mr. Brolick asked Ben Waymeyer, who up until then had had the highest score in the class, if he was worried that I would now be competition for that high score. When Ben said that he was not worried, Mr. Brolick told him that he should be. To a girl who the world had taught that my intelligence was something to downplay, it was an important moment of reconsidering whether that was in fact the right lesson. I was in college and hoping for law school when I realized pretty late in the game that I needed a letter of recommendation from a professor to help really maximize my chances of getting into a good school. I didn't know enough at the time to know that really during my college years I should have been cultivating a relationship with a professor, interning, something else to help that professor know what to write about me. And so it was sort of nearly in a panic that I asked my senior year, my constitutional law professor, to write a letter of recommendation. He was really nice in sort of saying, I don't really know you. I didn't know that the TAs had been reading all of my work up until that time, but I think he saw the panic on my face and he told me he would consider it. Not only did he write the letter that helped me get into Notre Dame Law School, but he also took just a few extra precious minutes and left me a voicemail on a real-life answering machine. That was a machine that had a tape in your place. I'll tell you later. And on that message, he said that my final essay had been the best essay he had ever read from an undergrad. And I don't say that to brag, although, you know. I say it because at the time he left the message, I hadn't yet applied. My own fears about my own capability had prevented me from just doing it, just applying. And the fact he took that 2 extra minutes, 3 extra minutes to leave me that voicemail may have in fact changed the whole trajectory of my life. When I finally did make it to that law firm, it was a pretty overwhelming experience. I liken it to sort of going to a foreign country, although at the time I had never been to a foreign country. The norms, the customs, the language, so much of it was so different than I had ever experienced. I specifically remember a very senior partner in a meeting saying that on Saturday night he was going to the club, which 2 weeks later when I figured out he meant country club and not the club I had been picturing, made a little more sense. At the beginning of my third year, I was failing. I just was not up to the quality that the law firm needed from me. And there wasn't a single partner sort of assigned to me to sort of help ensure my success. And with more lawyers than time, it really would have been the easiest thing in the world to sort of shrug and let me fail. But Ann Reed decided that wasn't going to happen. Ann Reed gave me honest feedback about my performance, even when it was hard to say and hard for me to hear. She was clear in what the expectations were, and she told me she would be my partner in helping me improve the quality of my work. She was honest, she was consistent, she was encouraging, and ultimately, when I succeeded in turning around the level of my work that I was performing at the time, she was excited as I was. Those extra years that Ann provided me at the firm, me being able to make partner at a large firm in this community, not only helped me build the skills that I continue to use every day in my professional life, but they also gave me very real income that I needed for my very real student loans. It was a good thing. But for Tonnet Calloway, I might still be working as a lawyer. At the time, Tonnet decided to use her power to invest in me. She was a mom of two. She was a wife. She was also the vice president of global HR for Harley-Davidson and on more boards than I could possibly list. But still, she saw something in me that she thought should be cultivated. Even though I had never run an organization, didn't have an MBA or a master's in public health, she told the executive committee at Maida House that they should consider me for the CEO position there. Because of her clout and her reputation, the executive committee gave me the opportunity of an interview and ultimately the job. I have no doubt that I would be living a perfectly fine life were I still practicing law, but I don't believe I would be living my purpose in the same way I get to live today because Tonnet Calloway decided to invest her power in me. I hate how incomplete this list is. I could talk about Mary Lou Young and her mentorship and generosity for an hour, and I haven't even gotten to talk about my incredible family. But I did want to carve out just 30 seconds to reflect for a second on sort of what a remarkable thing it is that we all have the ability to empower others. Power is funny in that if you have power, you can share it and you can give it, but you don't actually need power to be able to give power. Every time you encourage somebody to accomplish something they haven't and something you haven't, you are gifting power. Every time you donate to a nonprofit that's doing work you can't do or don't have the time to do, you are gifting power. My life story to date, good to know I'm not young anymore, Joan, thanks. My life story to date is possible only because so many people spent years or months or maybe even minutes to gift me power. And I hope you'll all join me in the solemn promise to pay that gift forward. Thank you.
Thank you again to all of our speakers. So we have if you look at the center aisle, we have a microphone there, and we're going to open this up to questions. Please, if you have a question, please line up, and we will try to get to everybody if we can. While everyone lines up, I'm going to get in a quick question. I'm curious if any of you would be willing to talk about an experience that you've had in your life that you hope the next generation of women doesn't have to go through.
Testing, can you hear me? Can you hear me in the back? So an experience that one of us went through that we would hope that was the last time anyone would have to go through. I know that it still happens, but the first experience that came to mind, I won't say where, because I don't want to shame that institution, but I went to a meeting somewhere. How's that for being vague? I went to a meeting somewhere, and I brought my admin with me. I think you know where this is going. So my admin and I walk in the room. I had not met the individuals that I was meeting. I was looking forward to having a discussion about a project that we were going to work on together. We had spoken over the phone, and this was a while back, so there was no Zoom, no Skype, so there was obviously no opportunity to actually see each other face to face. And I walk into the boardroom, predominantly all male, all white males. I walk in, my admin has my, what were those things that everyone loved, those planners, the Franklin Planner, okay? The Franklin Plan. We're still planning with those things, right? The Franklin Planner. So he turns to hand me the planner. The person walks up to me from the organization the corporation that I was getting ready to speak to, bypasses me and sticks their hand out to the admin and says, "Dr. Prince, it's a pleasure to meet you." So I still have great people, but that individual is actually gone, but he took care of that for me. I didn't have to say a word. So I hope that there is never another woman, period, who has to be disrespected or thought of because you have walked into the room that it couldn't possibly be you.
Go ahead with your
Hello?
question. Oh, that's loud. Hi, my name is Rebecca. I have two things. So I have a statement. I work for Girls Inc. It's a national nonprofit inspiring girls to be strong, smart, and bold. You should all look it up. And second, my question, I'm actually moving to D.C. I got accepted to American University for grad school. I'm going to be focusing on policy. I hope to go to D.C. and learn if I want to run for Congress. And so I have do you have any advice? And also specifically, Mary, you talked about others encouraging you to run for office. And so I'd really like to have some advice, please.
Just do it. No, I'm serious. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I got dragged through the mud, the stuff that's out on the internet that'll be there forever. Some of it is pretty nasty. And I was way outside my comfort zone, and yet it's the best thing that ever happened to me. But get in it to win. Just not, I'm going to run. Get in it to win and make sure you have the support team and do all the things. There's great programs out there that are helping, especially train women to run for office. And, there is, we call it our comfort zone. I call it a cage. And it's outside of that cage that the door opens to a world of possibilities. And for women, I think there's a lot that we feel, a lot of boxes we have to check to be ready to do things. Have we had enough training? Do we have enough support? And we keep going on and on and on. And we want things to be so perfect to be ready. We need to take a leap of faith at some point and have confidence in ourselves. And it's taken me a long time in my life to learn it, but I really, truly believe that failure is a sign of courage. and that there's only lessons to be learned, and whether you succeed or not isn't the most important thing.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Segrist, and Mary Burke, I just want to tell you that your story was really empowering. I ran for state assembly last cycle, and you donated to my campaign, so I just wanted to say thank you for your support. And I did emerge. One of my sisters is here. She ran as well, and she won. I did not. But, you know, I really just did it because I was really frustrated with how things were going. I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm a nurse educator, and I pulled 46%, and I'm running again in 2020 because I really think I could maybe pull off the win. So understanding your loss really hit home because going into it, I really thought I was going to pull off a win as well, and it was very devastating, but I think that talks about resilience, and it makes you want to try harder. And so for the women who are considering running or whatever, you know, you pick yourself up, and you're going to, you know, at the end of the day, it's about my kids, and I want to ensure that they have a good future. So thank you for your stories, all of you. They were really inspiring.
Hello, ladies. You guys did an amazing job. I'm very inspired. I actually was just at an event, something similar to this. The former lieutenant governor, she just did an event in Waukesha. I actually had the honor to sit at the same table as her, and her story was incredible. So, I'm Jessica Curry. I'm the founder of Missionary Curry for Women and Children. It's a nonprofit organization. We have a homeless shelter in Recede County, and we're doing an outreach in Milwaukee County. My question is, how do you stay motivated, and where do you find like that support group of women in this field? Because my friends that's my age, if you can guess my age, I'm kind of young a little bit, but but like, how do you find that group of people that you had when you was trying to be something great?
I get motivated every day by the incredible people I work with. And if you don't have a group like that, go find them. I was so lucky to work with incredible journalists like Mary, like Nancy, like a lot of people in this room, and they made it easy for me to come to work every day, to be inspired, and to continue doing great work. So I think wherever your team is, they may be where you work, or they may be where you live, or they may be in an extracurricular activity you're involved in, they may be in a nonprofit. Make sure you find them, because they will be the best motivation you need, and they will inspire you to go on and do great things.
I wanted to just jump on and add that. So, you know, when I started at the law firm, I met a lot of people who right away had business because their dad owned a business and they could give them work, or because their uncle knew somebody, and I didn't have those connections. And so really starting from, I had a family who loved me, which is awesome, but I didn't have those connections. And so when I just started looking around the community, and if I would see somebody who I thought was awesome, I would just figure out how to like add them to my world. I would just introduce myself. I would go to something if I saw them speaking. I would ask if they would have coffee with me. I would just like, I hope not be a pest, but just like stay at it. And I'm astounded at the generosity of people who will, if they recognize sort of that shared passion that, you know, we can see all the way across the auditorium, and you will just join in. And sort of as I started accumulating that network and those friends, what I realized is I really wanted to surround myself with positivity, which is not the same thing as surrounding myself with people who weren't going to tell me the truth, because my friends will tell me the truth, and I need that, and I love that. But my core group of people are people who believe that we have the power to make the world a better place. And we have so little precious free time. I want my free time to be with people who sort of share those core values. And, you know, not that I wish bad for anybody else. I just don't go out of my way to spend a ton of time with folks who aren't on that same energy and on that same page. So I would just encourage you to keep at it.
Good words, good and great advice. I think you have to find, I think as people, we look to other people sometimes to help us get through things. If you're a religious person, I think you can find that centered in yourself. Keep yourself motivated every day. Totally agree. Before my feet hit the floor every morning, I just say, thank you, God, for another day to try to get it right. And before my feet touch that floor, because that's how I approach the day. The days are like a roller coaster. Some days you're way at the top. Some days you're going to be down in the pits. And I always say that's your opportunity to deep breathe and get ready for the great ride back up. So stay motivated. I totally agree with you. Don't hang with people who are not motivating. I used to say I didn't have aches and pains until I had a girlfriend who woke up every day with an ache and pain and called and told me about it. And then things started hurting, and I thought, I need to stay away from you. And I feel much better. So I agree with all of them. And don't take a chance. What's the worst that can happen if you want to approach an Amy, a Mary, anyone up here? I did it. Some of you might know Gwen Jackson or remember my darling Gwen Jackson. I was 15. I had to write a paper for school about someone you admired. She was the first female executive at a clothing store here in town called Brill's years ago, and she was the first African American. I called her up and I said, they had payphones back then. So I borrowed money, I think it was a dime, and made this phone call, and very quickly, they transferred me to her, and I said, I will never forget this. Hi, my name is Joan Prince. I went on and did not catch my breath for about 3 minutes, and then I stopped. And all of a sudden, this voice says, dear, calm down. Now start over and tell me your name. And I did, and until the day she passed away a couple of months ago, she was my dear, dear friend. So take a chance.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Brenner. I graduated from UW Whitewater. Back when I was young, at school, college age, I had been in the student government, and I really enjoyed it. I have been like the hall wing representative, the hall representative, and in the representatives. And then more recently, when I went back to Whitewater, I was on an advisory board, but it really didn't amount to much of anything because as the head of the advisory board said, your vote really doesn't matter. We just want you to participate in these meetings. I also went to a meeting. It was to do with the street I live on. And after this meeting where I persuaded the engineer, Waukesha City engineer, and everybody else that was there to help with the water problem that some of our neighbors had. Anyways, the older woman said, you should run for office. But the thing is, I don't have the finances for that, and I'm wondering how to get that support. Sure, I can persuade and all that, but nobody, I'm not known other than the aldermen and the engineers and all that. So I think I should run, but I don't know how to start. And it's difficult there too because a lot of guys, the people who run have businesses, they have money, they're in the Republican Party. I'm like more independent, but so.
It does take money. I'm not going to tell you that you can run without money, but the fact is people do run and get really, really good at asking for money. And in fact, I spend hours every single day asking complete strangers for money, and I never liked doing it at the start, but I actually got really good at it. And the reason is I took it as an opportunity to create a connection and to also understand how I can help that person and support their vision. So it's not easy to do, but once if you approach it in an authentic way, running for office these days, everyone has to ask for money. And so that's, so I would say, don't let that stand in your way, and just recognize that that's pretty much a part of it. And I know I'm looking for the women who ran in this. How did you ask for money? Oh, yeah.
How did you get it?
Tell your story.
I have another thing. You know, the fear of people that you're running against are going to bring in dirty laundry. You know, how do you combat that? Oh, is he saying no more time?
He was telling me that we're running out of time, but
okay.
Can we get in one or two more questions? Okay. Sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
And, you know, as Mary, as you ran, you know, how did you combat the negativity of someone you're running against? You know, that's a fear of mine too, is that they're going to find some skeleton and bring it up and embarrass my family.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
I don't know if there's a great answer, or maybe I don't have a great answer to that. It's just, if you're passionate about what you believe in and why you would make a great public official, what you have to bring with it, you just have to get used to being able to tell your story and what you believe in and why you can make a difference with being elected. And that's what you have to be able to connect with people. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And if you focus on yourself and what you can do to bring to that office, I think you'll be successful.
Okay, thank you.
We're running a little low on time, but I got the okay for a couple more questions. So.
Okay, I'll be quick. My name is Sarah Rand. I'm trying to pretend like Mary Burke and stand here exuding confidence when actually I'm really shaking, not because I have a fear of speaking, but because I want to speak to something I'm extremely passionate about. Anniversaries are significant, and celebrating women's suffrage is huge. But that was American white women. It took more than a decade for our sisters of color to have any voice. And I look at our current situation and I feel like we're losing that voice. We're losing the voice of so many people in America who have so much to say and so much to give. And so I'm simply up here making a statement. It's not all about white women. So I ask everyone in this room to please open your eyes and see what's going on. Support candidates of color. Support your sisters of color. And thank you.
Good evening. I just want to thank her for that comments, because if the whole world thought like her, my life would be so much easier. Thank you. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your night, panelists, and sharing it with me and all of us. My name is Tiffany Kaler, and I'm the Women Veteran Coordinator with the Wisconsin Department of Veteran Affairs. So I want to talk about leadership, and I want to talk about breaking barriers, because I served in the U.S. Army, and any women veterans in the room, I want to thank you for your service as well. But in your respective areas, whether you were in law firms, universities, boardrooms, wherever, can you just talk about breaking barriers and how you maneuvered through a male-dominated situation or system? What did you do? I know, Joan, you talked a little bit about that, but how do you, there's a good movie that came out called Hidden Figures, how many men take credit for our work. How do you overcome that all the time in many situations? So thank you.
Very quickly, and I'll pass it down. The one thing that you have to learn, the first time that a male colleague took credit for my work was the last time it ever happened to me. The last. You have a voice. You have to speak up and use your voice. My suggestion to you would be, as my mother used to say, don't tell all your business until you're ready to execute. So first of all, the first time they heard it from me was when I was prepared to execute it. The second time was if they said what I had already said, then I would repeat, well, what I said, which you did not quite state what I had just said first, let me say it again for you. So grab your own voice back when it happens to you.
Recommend that you know you know what you know, and the minute anyone else tries to take credit for what you know, you find a way to very politely confront them, identify what they've done, and let them know, like Joan said, it's the last time it's going to happen. Take responsibility for who you are, what you know, and what you do, and make sure that you get credit for it in who matters.
I feel like I'm still in that learning stage and developing stage, but I remember I did an interview once with David Hogg before, and he let me speak most of the time because he's my friend, but when I rewatched the interview, he spoke for 10 minutes, I only spoke for 10 seconds. And he said the exact same rhetoric that I said, and even me saying more than him, and I realized, I was like, should I be upset about that? But I had to redefine that, right? You say, like, take it back and reclaim it, but that's my truth and it's my story, and the only person that can say it effectively and 100% authentically is myself.
I would also add to find your allies. There were women that worked in the Obama administration who got in the habit of when a woman would say something in a meeting, they would make sure to elevate what that woman already had said. So as Betsy said, I wanted to make sure we were thinking about X, Y, Z, and to just keep supporting each other. Before the end of the Obama administration, President Obama had noticed that that was happening, and he too had started joining in on that. So this doesn't have to be a women only. There are male allies, thank goodness. And you'll find your people and surround yourself with those people where you can.
I think we've got time for one more.
All right, I have a pretty short question. I'm Rose. So my question is, Dr. Prince, you touched on this shortly, but I have a question for the whole panel, and that is, what keeps you motivated to keep up the fight and to raise your voice, and when you feel like there can be so many setbacks?
I would say young women like you. Believe it or not, we were all very young once. And I remember being that 6-year-old and that 7-year-old and that 8-year-old and that 9-year-old and that teenager that didn't always have confidence and had obstacles. All of us will face obstacles in our lives for different reasons, but we will all face them. And what keeps me motivated is simply knowing that there's you are there, you are there, you are there. Those that are younger than I am doesn't make me smarter. I've just walked your path already. And it keeps me motivated to know that as long as I have breath, it's my job, it's my responsibility to give back, to reach forward, to do whatever I can do, because I'll repeat it again. What I always say to a young woman or someone who comes to me for advice is, I am simply keeping this seat warm for you. This is your seat. That's what keeps me motivated.
I joined Dr. Prince in looking forward. I mean, you don't have to look very far here to see someone incredible, but I also think about the past. My great-grandpa and his wife picked fruit for a living. My grandpa worked at a factory. My mom made it to that bank job. And I now get the incredible privilege to be on a stage like this and get to help raise, we hope this year, more than $56 million to invest in the community where the community needs us. And so all of us have those people who came before us, and just, sort of the beginning we started, and I'm going to hand this over to George, I know, in a minute, but just what an incredible privilege it is to be at a time where many of us might be one of the first accomplishing something, but there's so many people who worked so hard to get as far as they did before we did, and it's just such an incredible privilege. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Okay, this concludes our program for the evening. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty inspired. A big thank you to all the speakers, to our sponsors, Mount Mary University, and of course the Milwaukee Journal. Remember to look under your chairs if you didn't, and please do fill out our survey. It'll just take you a minute. And now, here to give some parting remarks is George Stanley, editor of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.
Thank you, Nancy. The Journal Sentinel, tonight with the help of Mount Mary, is holding events that we hope will build bridges in our community and bring people together to find better ways. Can you hear me in back? Is that coming up? Okay. And the fundamental solution, of course, is for us as a community to value all our people, to see others as a gift, a person of great promise, rather than a threat, a competitor, an afterthought, or worse. Years ago, I read a novel that used prayer candle flames in a house of worship as a metaphor for human souls. When you watch that dancing flame, that unique fire of spirit within, you stop paying attention to the shape, the color, the size of the container holding it. As Joan and Betsy said tonight, we're stewards while we're here, keepers of that fire. And we need to focus on the candle flames and not the candle holders. I'd like to thank a few of the bright lights with us tonight. Thank you, Christine and Mount Mary, for hosting us. Thank you, Nancy and Mary, for bringing us together. Thank you, Betsy, Mary, Bria, Joan, and Amy, for sharing your brilliant stories. Bria, someday I hope to be half the speaker you are. And thank all of you for being here tonight. Let's please keep the flame of this discussion alive and pay it forward as